Well, it's time for another one of my raised bed garden updates. This is what it looked like 2 weeks ago. This is what it looked like last week. And this is what it looked like yesterday. I was going to get this video up yesterday, but I got tied up by one of my neighbors. So it's just as well, because this is what it looks like today. It's back to reality. What you see here is the one little place on earth that defies all the advice of the garden gurus of today. Now, I'm not saying that their ideas don't work. I'm saying that they don't work for me. They don't fit into the amount of time that I have to put into this. They don't fit into my soil structure. They don't fit into my climate. They just don't fit here. So I can't have the Garden of Eden. I have to have the Garden of Reason. I have to do what is reasonable, that fits into my life and fits into the conditions that I'm working with. In my last video, I talked about how I've tried to improve the soil. I added some perlite, and I've tilled in some organic matter. It's not as much as I would like, but I don't have time for much more than that. A lot of you had suggestions on how I could improve this soil, and I checked with the extension offices that are familiar with my type of clay. Now, clays can be different, so I stuck to the ones that are familiar with this gray clay. The things that they said that I could add are compost or manure. They also said there was a pine bark conditioner out there, which I've never seen before, and they said that's not to be confused with pine bark chips, which is a mulch. This conditioner is supposed to be like the size of gravel. They said I could use pea gravel, but I kind of disagree with that, because I think that the weight of it would compact the soil even worse. I could use vermiculite or perlite or expanded shell, and I've never seen the expanded shell sold around here. The things they said not to use are peat moss, because it would just end up a bog out there. It would add to my moisture problem. I should not use gypsum, because I have an acid clay that only works with an alkaline clay, and they sell gypsum around here like crazy, even though the majority of us have an acid clay we're working with. I should not use fresh wood chips or sawdust, because they'll rob the nitrogen from the soil. And surprisingly, I should not add any sand, because they said any mixture less than 70% sand and 30% clay actually packs more densely. If I didn't add enough sand, I could end up with bricks out here. Again, I want to stress that clays can be different. If you're dealing with clay, be sure to find advice based on the type that you're dealing with. Some clay is actually wonderful. Some of those red clays out there have a lot of minerals in them. They can drain well. And one of the great parts of clay is that it holds nutrients very well for your plants to use. And because of that, you don't have a serious problem with the nutrients leaching out into the groundwater. I mean, you've seen the amount of water that goes onto my garden, and the clay is holding those nutrients well and providing it for my plants. So there is a good side to clay, actually. And believe it or not, I use less than half the recommended amount of fertilizer on my gardens. Now, any success that I have with this garden, I attribute to my rototiller, because I have to add aeration to the soil in order to make it work. Any areas that I do not till do not do well. The kale here, you can see all the kale to the left, how it looks nice and healthy. The kale to the far right, I could not get my tiller in there. I tried to aerate it with my little trowel. I didn't do a good job of it, and you can see the difference. Another problem that I have is that my winters don't get cold enough to kill most insects or diseases. And with our humidity in the summer, disease will run rampant through here if I don't get a handle on it early. And I already see it starting on my strawberry plants. And with all this rain, it makes it very difficult to spray. I sprayed these plants with neem yesterday, but I guarantee you it's all gone by now. Fortunately, the only strawberries I've seen affected so far are the ones outside the fence. I think that is leaf spot, and I think that is blight. This is a different variety called Sequoia, and they seem to be more disease resistant. I've had a lot of luck with this variety. I started noticing some holes in some of my strawberry leaves and in my blackberry leaves, and all signs indicate that this is due to a European pepper moth. They're nocturnal, so you're not going to catch them in the act. I sprayed with BT, and that seems to deter them. My Detroit beets are doing well. They're the ones on the right. The left side of the box is kale that I transplanted to replace my peas that failed. And I yanked out the broccoli and replaced the kale down there. And that cabbage has a week or two to shape up where it's getting shipped out too. Here's the sugar beets. I didn't get the best germination on these, and somebody's dog ran through there one night, which didn't help matters either. I tell you, if it wasn't for bad luck, I wouldn't have any at all. Here's my new strawberry plants. They're moving right along, and I still haven't weeded these beds. I really don't get a whole lot of weeds out here because of the pavers. I'm not cutting grass and throwing weed seed into the beds. And if you see those little green things there, they're not weeds. They're actually cayenne peppers. I had peppers out there last year. And I mentioned in one of my videos before that I've noticed that peppers reseed themselves. And once again, they did it. And I looked out back, and I also had banana peppers that had reseeded themselves. So if you look around, you might find some pepper plants have reseeded. And I have 2 pots of peppers in the garage that I'm trying to sprout, and I don't have a thing in there yet. Out here, they're all over the place. Here's my potatoes, and their growth has been kind of sporadic. This is the first time I've grown them in the boxes. I usually grow the potatoes in the garden out back. But last year, my potatoes were a failure. We had so much rain that they just drowned out there. When I dug them up, I had a lot of potatoes, but they didn't get very big. And the potatoes were covered with like white pimples. What happened was the soil just became so waterlogged that they were suffocating there, and the pores in their skins were reaching for oxygen and resulted in those little pimples. Hopefully that won't happen this year. Here's my onions. That's Georgia on the right and Texas on the left. I ain't saying nothing. So here's what the garden looked like yesterday. Here's what it looks like today. And here's my garden of tomorrow. I got the garden out back turned over. Now I just need a dry spell, and I'll get started on that one. Hope it helps.